I got my hands on the new OnePlus Pad 2, a new Android tablet that's a nice little upgrade over last year's version. Has the pen gotten any better though? Let's check it out. Hello, my name is Brad. I review tech for creative professionals, and there's a lot to love about this new OnePlus Pad. It's packing a lot of punch for a fairly reasonable $550 price point. Let's start by taking a look at what comes in the box. First of all, you have the tablet itself. This year, we have a nice gray finish. There's nothing exciting going on here. Last year, there was a metallic forest green, and I could see why some people didn't care for that color as much. This one is much more neutral. No one's going to be offended by the gray. You also, in the box, have a quick start guide and some of the papers. And underneath that, you have an adapter and a branded red USB to USB-C cable for charging. I also picked up the folio case. It was actually free with my pre-order, so yeah, why not? It looks and feels good. It has this faux leather texture on it. The camera sits in the back, snuggles in there really good, fits perfectly. Magnetically, you can set it up at 2 different angles. The downside here is it's not really built for artists like the iPad's folio cover is. None of these angles are good drawing angles. Even if you flip it around, the magnet is not strong enough to hold the weight of your palm. I ended up using just an inexpensive stand that I had sitting around to hold it up on an angle. If you're just drawing while holding this on your lap or sitting on a chair, sofa, you're gonna be fine. You're not gonna need the stand. At a desk, you might want to get something. There's also the OnePlus Stylus 2. This is an extra $100 add-on. It has a flat side so it can magnetically charge along the side of the device, kind of like the Apple Pencil, but the rounded side has this very slight faux leather finish, kind of like the case. I really dig how it feels in the hand. There's also, not pictured here because I didn't pick one up, is a keyboard accessory that you can grab for about $150. I didn't get that one because I don't really type on these much. I'm usually using them for drawing, but if I chose to go with that instead of the folio cover, it was only $75 more, which is nice because keyboard accessories for like the Surface Pro, the iPad Pro are going for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. $75 on a discount or even $150 seems pretty reasonable for just a keyboard. So let's start breaking this down by the specs, and let's start with that screen. This is an LCD display, and it's one of the better looking LCD displays out there. A lot of devices going OLED, understandable because you're getting the blacks and the really white brightness there. This is not that, but it's not that far off from a low-end OLED. So it's solid, and it also helps them keep the price reasonable here. Now, this screen is a little bit bigger than last year's model. Last year's model was 11.6 inches corner to corner. This is 12.1 inches. It has some nice rounded edges along the side that gives it a more premium feel. And also with that slightly larger size, we're getting a slightly larger resolution. They're calling this 3K. We're talking 3000 pixels by 2120 pixels. And also 600 nits of brightness. This screen also has a variable refresh rate, so we can go all the way up to 144 hertz. Now, this version of Android that they're running has their own skin on it. They call it Oxygen OS. Now, this might be my favorite in terms of tablet skins out there. I really like what Samsung is doing, but on a tablet, Oxygen OS just feels so much more snappy. It's all in the animations. Oftentimes you can't tell, does this look good because of that faster refresh rate, or does this look good because the animations are really snappy? Here it's probably both of those things working in conjunction. I think what happens on Google tablets, or even Samsung's tablets, is that skin is really designed for phones. When you have a small screen and you're scrolling around, it's just moving a small amount, so it feels really good when you're swiping back and forth. The animation looks great, but when you take that same animation, you blow it up to a really wide tablet, it feels a little bit slower. It's not necessarily that the device is laggy, but the animations just are a little bit slower, take a little bit longer, so it feels kind of laggy. It doesn't feel as snappy, whereas here this really feels like it was designed for a tablet. And those little things make a difference. Not a huge difference, not a deal maker, but it does make it feel better. Now, the one that I have here has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 CPU. We've got 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. Now, this is the only one that's available here in the US. It's the only one I could buy. But I saw online some sites listing out the specs had an 8 gigabyte RAM version with 128 gigabytes of storage. That may be available in your territory. It's not available here now, but if it can save you a little bit of money and you don't need quite as much storage, it might be a good option for you. I think for drawing and illustration, 128 gigabytes is fine. Now, once you start getting into having or storing a lot of videos, on your device, or if you're going to load up a bunch of games on your device, that's where the storage really starts to fill up quickly. There's also a USB Type-C port along the bottom for charging. You got a power button along the top. You got your volume rocker. One thing to note is that this does not have any kind of fingerprint detection, whether we're talking under the screen or on the power button. So you're going to be relying either on your PIN or the camera for face recognition to log in. Now, if you're looking to draw on this thing, you really do want to check out the pen. Or if you just got this and are interested in learning how to draw, I have a course for that. Over at bradsartschool.com, I have an Intro to Digital Art, Learn to Draw in 60 Days course as well. One is all about the mechanics of drawings, really built for bare bones beginners just starting out. The other is more about how to take advantage of some of the digital art tools that exist, some of these apps that I'm using here in this video, like Clip Studio Paint or Krita. Anyway, check out my website if you want to learn more about those courses. Now, this pen charges along the side of the tablet. It magnetically attaches there. It actually attaches several different ways. It's easy to attach this thing without it actually starting to charge. You're going to notice that it's not quite as strongly attached, and that's usually a sign that you have to move it over like a half an inch or so to really click it into place. Now, the magnet holds pretty well. If you really want to, you can flick it off, you can knock it off. If you're just slamming this into your bag and not being careful, the pen is going to fall off, or if you get jostled around a little bit. But just carrying around, being careful with it, it's going to stay in place. Now, the tip of this pen is a little bit wider than what you see on some other pens, especially the S Pen that you find with Samsung devices. This is a plastic tip. It's a somewhat softer plastic tip. There is just a touch of resistance when you're drawing with it. Some pens have like a rubber tip on them, and that gives you a little bit more resistance when you're kind of gliding around that glass screen. This doesn't quite have that, but it's not hard plastic, so you are going to notice some resistance. It's going to give you a little bit more control there. I did run into a fair number of palm rejection issues when I started drawing with this. See all these palm dots here while I was drawing in Clip Studio Paint. Fortunately for most Android drawing apps, you have a setting that basically says, hey, if you only want to draw with your stylus and have us just ignore your hand, we can do that for you. It's a good idea to look that up in your drawing app because you're going to need that. In fact, you're going to need that with almost any Android tablet you have. This one had more dots than usual, but it is something you can fix. Man, Android drawing apps, so much better than they were just a few years ago. You guys have no idea. Now, this pen does have some wave to it. In some programs, this bothered me more than others. The first program that I drew in was my favorite, Clip Studio Paint. That's what I'm using here in the background for most of the drawing that I'm doing. Now, this is a USI stylus, and I'm not a huge fan of USI styluses. This one performs a little bit better than the others, but it's not as good as a Samsung pen. It's not as good as an Apple Pencil or something you might find on a Wacom tablet. As I jumped over to something like Krita, I just didn't have the control I was looking for even when I was playing with smoothing and doing some of those other things. It really depends on finding the tools that you want to use. So I would say that this pen in particular, really right on the edge of what I want to recommend, right? Some people, it's going to drive them nuts. They're going to hate it, especially if you're coming from like a Wacom tablet, has a really accurate pen, doesn't have any lag, you don't have to turn up brush smoothing. This sort of thing is going to bug you. If you're brand new to drawing, or if you're going to be doing mostly handwriting and you want to just take up some sketching and stuff, it's probably going to work pretty well from you. So you do want to be a little bit careful if you want to dive in and make this your main art tool. What ends up happening when you turn on brush smoothing oftentimes is that increases the lag. It also decreases your accuracy as you're drawing. You're going to get that smoother line with that stabilization turned on, but it's just going to be a little bit harder to kind of match up lines, or you're going to feel like it should end here, but it ends just a little bit too short. Or if you try to get a hard edge, that edge might round out a little bit. Basically, smoothing makes the pen feel less organic. So it's this trade-off. Do you want the smoother lines or the more organic feel when you're drawing? Some of the odds and ends for this tablet are like the cameras. The camera on the back is actually pretty decent. It's got a good sized camera bump. It's one of the most noticeable features when you look at this tablet that separates it from every other tablet out there. The camera being kind of centered and rounded in the middle. It's 13 megapixels, can do 4K video at 30 frames per second. The selfie camera around the front is pretty much what you'd expect from a selfie camera on a tablet. It's not fantastic, but it gets the job done. It's 8 megapixels. There are stereo speakers. There's actually 6 speakers tucked into this thing. It sounds better than it should for a tablet this thin. It's solid. It's not the greatest sound you're going to ever hear, but considering it's coming out of a tablet, it's not bad. There's no way to expand the storage in this, so the storage that you get is what you get. There's no extra room for like an SD SD card like you find on many Android tablets. Also, there's no headphone jack, which is pretty much standard nowadays. It's hard to find a tablet with a headphone jack now. Battery life was pretty solid. I found I was getting maybe 5-6 hours of drawing time out of this thing, which is about what I'd expect out of most, solid Android tablets. If you're doing other things like watching videos, many times these processors are really built optimized for that sort of thing. Or if you turn down the brightness, you can get more time out of it. At the end of the day, this is a nice mid-tier tablet. It's on par with the Samsung Galaxy Tab S9 FE. Now, a lot of people are going to want this processor, this Snapdragon processor, over the Exynos that you're going to find in the Samsung. It makes a lot of sense. For me, personally, it's all about the pen. That's the thing that I'm looking for. My experience on the Tab S9 FE is that the processor is good enough. I didn't run into any situations where it was lagging on me or anything. It worked well. A lot of people are going to look for the better processor because you're going to want the device to last longer. So it's really about what trade-off you personally want to make. So whether we're talking about the iPad Air, the S9 FE, or we're talking about this, I think they're all kind of in the same range. No matter which one you get, you're going to get a really solid tablet. The question is, what trade-off are you going to make? You want the best pen with Android? Galaxy Tab FE. You want the tablet that's going to perform the best. Maybe you're going to do more with gaming or that sort of thing. Maybe you go with this one. Obviously, if you're in the Apple ecosystem and that's what you want, there you go, iPad Air. But what do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.